Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lush Foliage. I hope you guys are fine and are safe. So in today's video we are talking about an extremely beautiful ornamental plant called as the Piper Ornatum. Now this belongs to the family of Piperaceae. It's an extremely beautiful ornamental plant which is grown indoor as well as outdoor. Now indoor there is nothing much you need to be worried about light, because obviously you are not going to be getting a lot of direct sunlight, so they tend to do excellent indoor. But when you're growing this plant outdoor, ensure that you do not put it out in direct sunlight, otherwise the leaves will get burned. Now this is a fairly small plant, that's why it looks really tiny, but ideally in nature this plant tends to grow around 6 to 8 feet. Now it is a winding plant, which means that if you're going to use a string, if you're going to use a pole, it will start to cling on to it and it will start to grow. Right now this plant is very small, so you can see it is not winding a lot because it hardly has any stem. But you will be able to see this is how they put out these aerial roots, and then they latch on to whatever you have, a string, a rope or a pole. It will start to grow on it because it's a winding plant. Now the major attraction of this ornamental plant is not of its flowers. It definitely flowers, but it's more known for its foliage. You can see this beautiful pattern of color on this leaves. It has this dark leaves with a lot of pink and silver patches on the leaves, and this is a very popular house plant, especially indoor, because a lot of people like to grow this near the table or near the windowsill where it gets a good amount of indirect bright light. Now please do not keep this plant in a dark room or in a place where there is not much light. It does require a good amount of indirect to medium bright light, so ensure that you give it a good light. Now the soil has to be very loose, porous and well draining. You can make the same soil mix which I use for my plants. I'll put the link in the description below. The soil has to be loose, porous, so basically there has to be a little bit of coco peat, because they prefer a very slight amount of moisture in the soil but not soggy wet soil. So ensure that you add a little bit of coco peat with perlite, sand and garden soil. Perlite and sand is going to make the soil very well draining. The pot needs to have a drain hole because they do not like to be sitting in soggy wet soil, so ensure that there is a good amount of drainage. The soil shouldn't stay soggy wet, otherwise it will harm the plant. The roots might get rotted, so it should be a well draining soil media that you're using. Now talking about watering, I would advise when you feel that almost 60 to 70% of the soil is dry, or when you tend to put your finger and you feel that the soil is dry, go ahead and water it. It does not require very frequent watering. Whenever you tend to see that the soil is dry, go ahead and water it. Do not keep it underwatered for a very long time. Do not keep it under the air conditioning vent. Do not keep it closer to the heater, otherwise the leaves will get damaged, the leaves will get dried up. So you have to ensure that you keep it in a place wherein it gets a good amount of indirect bright light. At the same time it has a good amount of cool air circulation around it. Now talking about propagation, once the plant starts to grow, you can do a root division, or you can cut it just below the aerial roots. Like you can see over here, there is one little small aerial root. You can just cut it beneath that. I won't be cutting this plant right now because it's very small. I want it to grow on a moss pole, so I will pot it very soon once the poles arrive. So this is how the plant is. It's extremely easy to grow plant, nothing much to be worried. You can easily grow it on your study table or near the windowsill. You can keep it closer to the window, wherever you feel it's comfortable. You can even grow it in a plastic pot, in a terracotta pot. If you're going to use it in a terracotta pot, then you'll have to check on your watering because it's going to be a little different. Plastic containers tend to retain a little bit of moisture, so you do not need to water them quite often. But a terracotta, concrete or an unglazed clay pot, you'll have to check because the soil tends to dry much faster. Now talking about, is this plant toxic? Now ideally this plant is not toxic to humans as well as pets, but you have to be careful. It doesn't mean that you are going to go ahead and ingest the leaves of this, though it is said that this plant has medicinal values, but again I am not quite sure. So I would say do not do anything unless you have the proper proof of it. So it's always better to just grow it, keep it aside. Do not just go ahead and ingest a particular plant just because it's said that it has medicinal values. Probably there could be some toxins, but it's always better that you do not ingest or eat any of those leaves. You never know, there could be something else related in the plant, so always be careful. But otherwise this plant is a non-toxic plant. It can be grown very easily indoor as well as outdoor. Outdoor, as I said, if you're growing it, please do not keep it in direct sunlight. You can keep it under a shade cloth, or you can keep it under a shade wherever there is a good amount of indirect bright light. So guys, I hope that this video on Piper Ornatum was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe and keep planting.